abject in the East Indian, or intellectual in the Caucasian. Others opined about the broader implications of widespread use, as they saw a correlation between a society's drug of choice and its apparent degree of advancement. In 1858, a writer for Scientific American suggested that people in the Ottoman Empire and in China had an indolent character, and that their use of powerful narcotic drugs helped to render them inactive. Illinois physician Leslie Keeley regarded opium dreaming as incompatible with America in the 1880s. The sluggish nations of the Orient may be content to let today be as yesterday, and tomorrow as today, he supposed. Arab men, he believed, lived much as their ancestors had thousands of years earlier. He insisted that if an American became addicted to opium, he was exchanging a life of forward-looking change for one devoid of achievement. He passes from the living, progressive world, he warned, into a desert, whose dry and dreary pathways have no end. The impact of Chinese opium use, which appeared to have halted the progress of an ancient and accomplished nation in the 19th century, added to the perception of Eastern lassitude. As historian Alan Baumler has observed, China became the classic example of the decadent, stagnant East against which the modern, active West was contrasted. For most of the century, there was little public recognition of habitual drug use as an American problem. Although it was less visible than drug use in other countries, such consumption grew extensively throughout much of the 19th century. In 1840, for example, the value of opium imported into the United States was just under $41,000. By 1865, it had reached more than $932,000, far out of proportion to population growth. Despite medical demand having increased significantly during the Civil War, a writer for New York's Journal of Commerce insisted that most of the increase was unrelated to the conflict, that there had been a very heavy consumption of opium previous to the war. Those consumers, he added, use the drug habitually in some form. In 1868, Ohio physician Lewis Barnes explained that the public was largely unaware of problems associated with opium dependency, because opium users hid their habit. In America, he wrote, the victim of opium was ashamed of his habit and indulges in solitude. He recoils and hides and eats and suffers and dies in secret. This book, in part, seeks to reveal that hidden but extensive usage. Habit Forming examines the addictive psychoactive substances, other than alcohol, that Americans used between 1776 and 1914, when there was almost no federal regulation of drugs. The study begins with the creation of the nation and ends with federal passage of the Harrison Narcotic Act, which restricted the public's access to cocaine and opiates. Except for a 1909 law that banned the importation of the form of opium that is smoked, the Harrison Act was the first federal measure restricting access to drugs. This work places the topic in a global context, because many Americans learned about drug habituation and pleasure-seeking drug use by reading accounts from abroad. In addition, international considerations inspired the earliest U.S. laws on narcotics. Habit forming makes several important contributions to the understanding of this topic. Its emphasis is earlier than that of previous histories, with 2/3 of the chapters focused on the era before domestic drug addiction was widely discussed. It pays extensive attention to Americans' knowledge of compulsive drug use, gained from reading about habitual use abroad. The global context is crucial in exploring early Americans' understanding and misunderstanding of the subject, due to the general silence regarding domestic use. Habit forming includes all the prominent psychoactive substances, except for alcohol.